8 terrifying discoveries found in Siberia that shouldn't exist, yet they do. Siberia has long been regarded as one of the most mysterious and harshest regions on Earth. Stretching across millions of square miles with endless taiga forests, majestic mountain ranges, and layers of permafrost that can reach hundreds of feet thick, this land is like a giant vault preserving countless secrets from the past. Whenever the ice melts or an archaeological excavation takes place, researchers are given the opportunity to uncover discoveries that leave the entire world astonished. From remarkably preserved mummies that have survived for thousands of years, ancient burial sites containing strange rituals, skeletons found in unusual positions, to prehistoric creatures preserved almost perfectly. All of these discoveries continue to force scientists to ask new questions about human history. What is truly fascinating is that many of these discoveries are so unusual that if people only heard the stories, they might believe they were nothing more than legends or science fiction. But every one of them is real, discoveries documented by archaeologists and scientists after years of careful research. So what is truly hidden beneath Siberia's frozen layers of ice? What secrets lie behind these mysterious findings? Join us as we begin a journey to explore 8 terrifying discoveries in Siberia that should never have existed, but are completely real, and uncover the astonishing secrets this mysterious land has been hiding until now. We start with the 1,300-year-old dark dancer skeleton, a bizarre burial pose that archaeologists still cannot fully explain. Within archaeology, there are graves where lifting a coffin lid answers nearly every outstanding question. Then there are finds that grow more confusing the more experts study them. Sometimes a skeleton's resting posture raises far more puzzles than any treasure vault overflowing with gold and silver. This particular case falls firmly into that second category. Our investigation brings us to Primorsky Krai in Russia's Far East, home to the ancient Ust-Ivanovka burial ground deep within Siberian territory. It was at this site that archaeologists unearthed a strange skeleton dating back roughly 1,300 years, thought to belong to a man who lived sometime between the 7th and 9th centuries AD. The manner in which this individual was interred has kept specialists locked in debate for many years. Right from the start of excavation, researchers noticed the skeleton's posture matched no known local burial custom. The man lay flat on his back, yet his legs were crossed over one another as if frozen mid-dance. His knees splayed outward and his arms folded across his pelvis in an equally perplexing arrangement. At first glance, onlookers could easily picture a performer paused mid-routine rather than a person laid to rest more than a millennium earlier. Because of this uncanny stance, researchers nicknamed the remains the Dark Ages Dancer. Denis Volkov, one of the excavating archaeologists, shared that the team consulted multiple forensic experts and biological anthropologists. After thorough bone and joint analysis, they reached a surprising conclusion. The man's legs had almost certainly been bound before burial. Their reasoning is straightforward. Without restraints, natural decomposition would have pulled the limbs into a straight alignment. Such a stable crossed position could not occur on its own. Investigators suspect his arms may also have been tied down. This immediately opens up difficult unanswered questions. Was he a prisoner, a condemned criminal, or the victim of some long-lost ceremonial rite? The mystery extends well beyond the odd skeletal positioning. His grave stood out sharply against every other interment at Ust-Ivanovka. Nearby graves were circular, while his tomb was built in a rectangular shape. Even more curious, the grave floor held a layer of white sand that does not naturally occur in this area. This sand must have been transported from elsewhere, signaling the deceased held special status, or that his burial followed highly unusual circumstances. Another telling detail emerged during digging. A metal arrowhead remained embedded inside the skeleton's hip bone. This strongly suggests an arrow strike caused his death. That would mean his passing may tie to combat, official execution, or an obscure ritual whose purpose we still cannot decipher. Anthropological study indicates he likely belonged to the Mohe, an ancient Tungusic-related people who once inhabited large swathes of Northeast Asia. Next we turn to the 5,500-year-old double burial in Siberia, where 2 skeletons still clasp hands. If the prior find showed us a burial posture unlike anything experts had documented, this next case carries powerful emotional weight. What stunned archaeologists here was not precious metal or rare artifacts. Instead, it was human remains resting side by side for millennia, arranged as though the pair never wished to let go of one another. Could these intertwined hands represent eternal love, or are they grim evidence of a forgotten ancient custom? To find clues, we travel to Staryi Tartas within Russia's Novosibirsk Oblast in Siberia. Researchers from the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences carried out one of the region's most important digs in recent decades at this location. The team uncovered around 600 ancient graves dating to approximately 3500 BC, more than 5,500 years ago, during the Bronze Age. The sheer number of burials confirms this once served as a major cemetery for an established community. Early findings appeared consistent with typical Bronze Age burial patterns. As work progressed, however, something very strange came to light. Many graves held more than one person. Some contained 2, 3, or even 4 skeletons laid together. A number held an adult alongside a small child, while others held what appeared to be whole family units of mother, father, and 2 children. These remains offer valuable insight into household structures and ancient social organization. The most arresting discoveries came from paired burial pits. Several graves contained a man and woman positioned facing each other. Some still maintained a hand-holding posture, others lay so close they looked locked in an eternal embrace. The sight deeply moved everyone working on site. Remarkably, after 5,500 years, their placement stayed largely intact, giving the impression time never pulled them apart. For many observers, this immediately brings to mind a timeless romantic narrative. Perhaps they were husband and wife who died together and were buried so they could journey onward together in the afterlife. Archaeology cannot rely purely on sentiment, though, and researchers have weighed alternative possibilities. One widely discussed theory proposes these paired burials stemmed from funeral sacrifice following a man's death. Under this interpretation, upon the household leader's passing, his wife may have been killed and interred alongside him. Several old civilizations practiced comparable customs, believing the dead required companionship and care in the next world. If correct, those joined hands would not symbolize devotion, but mark a deeply sorrowful ritual. Still, no hard physical evidence has yet proven this idea. Russian scholar Professor Lev Klein from St. Petersburg University offered another viewpoint. He suggests double burials may simply reflect Bronze Age spiritual worldviews. Communities may have believed in rebirth or an afterlife, burying loved ones together so they could continue their spiritual journey side by side. Under this reading, these graves represent not tragedy, but sincere faith in existence beyond death. That is why debate continues to this day. Scientists keep studying these skeletons using modern tools, including DNA sequencing and radiocarbon isotope testing, hoping to clarify biological relationships between those buried together. Were they actual spouses, siblings, other relatives, or people with no blood connection at all? Full DNA results may one day deliver definitive answers. Whatever the real story is, these remains teach us far more than just burial customs. They grant us a window into how this ancient society understood family bonds, human connection, and mortality itself. They preserve the belief systems and worldview of a civilization vanished thousands of years ago, and that makes them endlessly fascinating. Moving forward, we explore rare grave goods found inside ancient children's tombs, shedding light on Siberian noble society 1,300 years ago. When we think of ornate ancient tombs loaded with jewelry and valuable relics, our minds usually picture kings, powerful chieftains, or celebrated warriors. Across most old civilizations, only high-ranking individuals received burials filled with items signifying wealth and authority, but frozen Siberian soil delivered findings contradicting those assumptions. Valuable grave treasures turned up not in rulers' resting places, but accompanying the bodies of very young children. This took archaeologists completely by surprise. How could children who never reached adulthood possess treasures most grown-ups of that era would never own? Was this nothing more than grieving parents expressing deep affection for lost offspring? Or do these artifacts reveal a complex social order existing more than 1,000 years in the past? To uncover answers, teams excavated multiple ancient burial sites across southern Siberia. Analysis dates these tombs between the 5th and 8th centuries AD, placing them roughly 1,300 to 1,600 years old. Artifacts quickly emerged from excavation units. Experts recovered finely worked belts decorated with elaborate patterns and skillfully crafted silver jewelry demonstrating advanced artisan skill. Even more unexpected were gemstones and other high-value objects placed alongside juvenile remains. Within most ancient cultures, such luxury items were reserved exclusively for adult nobility and community leaders. That makes their presence in children's graves hugely significant. It raises the question, could social standing be assigned the moment a child was born? The evidence points toward that possibility. One standout find came from the Ivanovka 6 archaeological site in Siberia. Diggers uncovered a uniquely styled silver pendant that provided critical context. Comparing it against thousands of Eurasian artifacts showed clear stylistic parallels to Byzantine-era jewelry. This does not mean local Siberian populations belonged to the Byzantine Empire or maintained direct contact with it, yet it proves Siberia 1,300 years ago was far from isolated as many once imagined. Regional elites likely participated in vast trade networks stretching thousands of miles, linking Central Asian steppelands all the way toward Europe. Therefore, these child burials do not merely reflect family prosperity. They illustrate Siberia's role as a key node within huge cross-continental exchange systems. Researchers further determined these objects were not toys or sentimental mementos. They were status symbols worn during life to signal identity and rank. Upon death, they were interred so that status and privilege would carry over into the afterworld. Experts say this points to a distinctive social reality across medieval southern Siberia and Central Asia. Status was not always earned through personal accomplishment or military triumph. Within many groups, noble lineage granted high social position from birth. Even small children were acknowledged as members of elite bloodlines. Regional folk legends speak of young princes fated from birth to become tribal leaders, heroes, and guides. Possibly because of these beliefs, when such noble children died young, they still received full ceremonial burials complete with regalia they would have inherited had they lived longer. Every belt, jewel, and gemstone buried beneath the earth represents more than archaeological relic. They document how ancient peoples thought about lineage, power, and inherited privilege across generations. These discoveries also rewrite scholarly understanding of medieval Siberian social structures. Previously, many assumed nomadic groups here operated under simple social arrangements. Today, archaeological proof confirms clear class divisions, noble households, and inherited status systems developing much earlier than previously estimated. The child burials at Ivanovka 6 and related Siberian sites tell us more than short lives cut short 1,300 years ago. They open a window onto a whole civilization thriving within one of our planet's coldest environments, and that is part of what makes archaeology so compelling. Next is the 2,500-year-old perfectly preserved ice princess mummy that challenges established scientific thinking. Archaeology regularly serves up puzzling, captivating finds. Some demand decades of study before full comprehension. Other discoveries make an immediate impression the second an ancient coffin is opened. Exactly that happened with a woman preserved underground for over 2,500 years in near-perfect condition. Her find reverberated across Russia and ranks among the 20th century's most important archaeological moments. To unpack her mysteries, we travel to the Ukok Plateau inside Siberia's Altai Republic. Sitting more than 6,500 feet above sea level, this high plateau stays freezing year-round. Its thick permafrost acted as a natural deep freezer, preserving ancient secrets for millennia. Back in 1993, archaeologist Natalia Polosmak led an expedition excavating an ancient burial mound on this plateau. Initially, the team anticipated ordinary artifacts and scattered human remains like countless prior digs. Once soil and stone layers were carefully cleared away, what lay beneath left researchers stunned. Under a wooden coffin structure sat an almost untouched burial chamber. Most importantly, looters had never disturbed this grave. For 2,500 years, it stayed sealed under permafrost, preserving nearly everything exactly as it had been laid down during interment. One team member later described the sensation as opening a doorway straight into the distant past. Ice trapped inside the tomb never thawed over centuries. That special frozen environment kept the woman's body extraordinarily well preserved. Skin, hair, sections of soft tissue, and fragments of clothing all survived, making her one of Siberia's most complete mummies ever unearthed. Following public announcement of the find, global media named her the Princess of Ukok, also widely known as the Ice Maiden. Scientific testing dated the mummy to around the 5th century BC, linking her to the nomadic Pazyryk culture roaming Siberian steppe lands. Staff at the National Museum of the Altai Republic explained she most likely belonged to Pazyryk high society. Even so, her precise identity continues to spark academic debate. Her grave placement itself is telling. Unlike most community members, she was buried separate from common cemetery zones. That detail leads many scholars to believe she may have been more than a noble lady, possibly holding important spiritual standing. Across many Eurasian steppe herder societies, shamans and ritual specialists often received segregated burials, marking their unique tribal function. Additional evidence strengthens that theory. Chemical testing detected mercury and copper traces inside her nasal passages. Some researchers interpret this as residue from ritual inhalation ceremonies intended to induce altered states of awareness, a practice attested in multiple old cultures. The mummy also wore a tall, intricately fashioned headdress, unlike standard Pazyryk women's attire, further supporting arguments for special spiritual status. Her most breathtaking feature appeared once preserved skin was cleaned. Detailed elaborate tattoos covered her arms and shoulders, depicting horned mythical beasts, running deer, and other creatures executed in distinct Pazyryk artistic style. These body art markings count among the finest surviving examples of ancient tattoo work anywhere in the world. Still, the biggest surprises waited deeper within the tomb. Archaeologists uncovered 6 horses interred alongside her. Among Pazyryk customs, burying multiple horses normally applied only to top-tier figures, usually male tribal chiefs and warriors. Interring a woman together with 6 horses reinforced conclusions that she occupied exceptional social standing. In subsequent years, modern science worked tirelessly reconstructing her life story. Investigators ran DNA analysis, MRI scans, and soft tissue examinations. Genetic markers showed connections to ancient European populations. Her height measured between 5'5" and 5'7" inches, quite tall for someone living 2,500 years ago. Medical examiners noted her very slight build, weighing approximately 108 pounds. This contrasted against other robust elite Pazyryk mummies studied earlier. Detailed medical assessments finally revealed why. Towards the end of her life, she suffered advanced breast cancer. Skeletal evidence additionally records injuries sustained in a fall while traveling with her nomadic group. What resonates with researchers is that despite serious illness, she was not abandoned. Her people brought her along during high-altitude migrations across the Ukok Plateau and cared for her until death. Cannabis remains recovered inside the tomb were likely used medicinally to ease her pain near life's end. This find reshapes our image of the Pazyryk people. They were not merely fierce nomadic fighters. They formed communities that cared for sick members and possessed considerable practical knowledge of medicinal plants and spiritual ceremony. After more than 20 years of research at Novosibirsk's Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography, in September 2012, the Ukok princess mummy was transferred to the National Museum of the Altai Republic in Gorno-Altaysk. She rests there today under specialized preservation conditions as one of Russia's most treasured archaeological artifacts. While the Ice Maiden astonished audiences thanks to incredible natural preservation, our following discovery is even more chilling. Archaeologists entered a Scythian royal tomb within Siberia, uncovering a gold-adorned woman laid beside the ruler, plus 35 attendant skeletons and 14 horse burials. The site lays bare brutal ancient funeral rites so shocking that even ancient historians wrote about them with disbelief. Let us examine this grim mystery. The gold-filled royal tomb with 35 sacrificed attendants exposes disturbing ancient burial customs. Up to this point, our tour across Siberia has introduced dancing skeletons, 5,500-year-old hand-holding double graves, noble children buried with riches, and the Ice Maiden locked in ice for millennia. But for sheer awe, mystery, and visceral unease, few finds rival Scythian royal tumuli. Power was displayed not only through piles of gold wealth, but through human lives sacrificed to accompany deceased rulers. Our next stop is the Valley of the Kings within Tuva in southern Siberia. This landscape hosts hundreds of Scythian burial mounds built by the formidable nomadic people dominating Eurasian steppe centuries before Christ. Excavations at one mound uncovered a roughly 2,600-year-old tomb thought to belong to a king or powerful tribal leader. Once topsoil layers were removed, countless golden artifacts surfaced. Ornate jewelry, ceremonial pieces, and finely crafted artwork illustrated opulent Scythian elite lifestyles. Yet what fascinated archaeologists most was not the hoard itself. Lying close beside the male tomb occupant rested the skeleton of a young woman still decorated with numerous gold ornaments. Researchers immediately wondered who she really was: a queen, royal consort, or a person selected solely to serve him in the afterlife. Definitive answers still elude us. Bone study shows the man suffered prostate cancer before death. However, the young woman's cause of death remains completely unknown. Her bones carry no clear trauma marks and no obvious signs of fatal disease. Some archaeologists hypothesize poisoning or ritual sacrifice before interment, though that stays unproven theory. If true, it represents one of the harshest funeral practices documented across Siberian steppe lands. Shocking findings kept coming as dig areas expanded. Outside the main burial chamber, workers found another 35 human skeletons. Anthropological analysis identified 16 males, 13 females, 5 children, plus 1 individual whose sex could not be determined. Human remains were not all. 14 horses also lay buried within this royal complex. Why were so many people and animals placed inside this tumulus? Was this simply a community graveyard, or did every burial tie back directly to the king resting at its center? Examining skeleton positioning, grave placement, and associated artifacts, researchers arrived at a grim hypothesis. It is highly probable all these people were put to death deliberately to serve as the ruler's retinue in the afterworld. Their deaths were not coincidental. They formed part of the funeral ceremony itself. This immediately brings to mind writings from Herodotus, often called the father of history. His texts describe extraordinary Scythian burial traditions. According to his accounts, upon a king's passing, loyal servants were slain so they could keep serving their master beyond death. The ruler's favorite horses were likewise killed and buried alongside him. Generations of scholars treated those descriptions as potential exaggeration. But this Siberian tomb's evidence aligns remarkably well with Herodotus's accounts written over 2,000 years ago, lending greater credibility to his narratives. This significantly updates modern understanding of Scythian funeral customs. Next, we look at the 7,700-year-old grave-preserving evidence for what may be humanity's oldest documented twin birth. Some ancient graves tell the story of just one individual. Others, from just sparse surviving bone fragments, can rewrite pieces of human history. This remarkable discovery hides not inside treasure hoards, but within the heartbreaking story of a young mother who lived almost 8,000 years ago. The site sits near Irkutsk in Siberia beside southern Lake Baikal, our planet's deepest and oldest freshwater lake. Almost nobody anticipated extraordinary archaeological secrets sleeping beneath its cold soils. Yet experienced researchers were stunned when the truth slowly emerged. The story begins back in 1997 when archaeologists investigated the prehistoric locomotive cemetery near Irkutsk. The location was originally spotted in 1897 during Trans-Siberian Railway construction. Urban expansion gradually covered large portions of the old graveyard, so full excavation never happened. Even partial finds drew global archaeological attention. So far, scientists have recovered 101 skeletons belonging to hunter-gatherer groups occupying Lake Baikal shores between 8,000 and 7,000 years ago. Every grave adds small pieces helping reconstruct prehistoric daily existence. Among hundreds of burials, one grave concealed something unlike all others. At first, experts assessed it simply as the resting spot for a woman aged 20 to 25 buried together with a single fetus. Remains were stored at Irkutsk State University awaiting further research. Had investigations ended there, it would have blended in with countless other Siberian ancient graves. Archaeology constantly delivers unforeseen twists. In 2012, Canadian archaeologist Dr. Angela Levers, working within the Baikal Hokkaido Archaeology Project, decided to re-examine those stored skeletal materials. Initially, she only intended reviewing details about the mother and presumed single fetus. Opening the container holding infant bone fragments, she spotted something odd. Several small bone pieces appeared duplicated. Normal fetal anatomy cannot produce matching duplicate fragments in those locations. The whole research team was shocked. Repeated measurement, comparison, and thorough analysis overturned earlier interpretations. This young woman had been carrying twins. Genuine archaeological evidence for ancient twins is extremely rare. Even when two infant skeletons share a grave, proving they are twins proves very difficult. Frequently, even DNA cannot deliver absolute certainty. At Locomotive, the evidence was unusually clear. Both fetal bone sets sat within the mother's pelvic cavity and between her leg bones, largely retaining original positioning after 7,700 years. The burial remained entirely undisturbed underground. Tiny rib fragments, delicate finger bones, and other small skeletal elements stayed correctly placed, allowing scientists to reconstruct the mother's final moments with impressive precision. After studying bone structure and fragment locations, Dr. Angela Levers put forward a compelling scenario. One twin presented breech, part of its body already emerging during labor while the second stayed inside in normal head-first orientation. The two infants became physically trapped together, halting childbirth entirely. Even with today's modern medicine, this represents a highly dangerous obstetric emergency. Almost 8,000 years ago, without medical intervention, survival would have been effectively impossible. The young mother and her two unborn children were laid forever beneath Siberian soil in this deeply poignant archaeological record. Moving onward, we examine the 2,500-year-old Tagar warrior tomb, filled with weaponry. Having explored the sorrowful tale of the 7,700-year-old mother and her twins, we shift to a completely different historical period. This was an era of horse-riding warriors dominating Eurasian steppelands, where weapons served not merely combat functions but also symbols of honor and social rank. Archaeologists uncovering warrior tombs routinely expect swords, arrowheads, and expertly forged daggers. That makes perfect sense, as many ancient cultures interred warriors with tools they used in life, believing those items would be needed traveling through the afterlife. Excavations within southern Siberia's Minusинsk Basin uncovered a Tagar culture tomb dating roughly 2,500 years ago, forcing experts to rethink local burial traditions. The Tagar flourished from the 8th through 3rd centuries BC, considered part of the broader Scythian-related nomadic world of southern Siberia. Removing soil layers quickly revealed this was no ordinary grave. Inside rested 4 individuals, 2 adult warriors, 1 male and 1 female, an elderly woman close to 60 years old, plus an infant less than 1 month old. Skeleton placement alone commanded close scholarly attention. The adult man and woman lay supine side by side, each accompanied by a large ceramic vessel, as if essential supplies for their journey onward. Most striking of all was the quantity of weapons buried with them. The man held 2 bronze daggers and 2 battle axes. The woman also received her own arms, including a long-handled implement interpreted as either a warhammer or battle axe. Additional grave goods included bronze knives, bronze mirrors, and an animal horn comb, all valuable possessions for Tagar society 2,500 years ago. Burying weapons alongside warriors might sound commonplace at first glance. Researchers point to a key, unusual detail. According to Novosibirsk State University Archaeology Department head Professor Oleg Andreevich Mitko, Tagar custom normally favored miniature symbolic copies of real-world objects. Tiny swords, small axes, and scaled-down tools stood in for possessions for the afterlife. Finding full-size functional weapons inside this tomb is therefore highly abnormal. It suggests these people held special social standing or their funeral ceremony deviated sharply from standard Tagar traditions. More puzzles remain. Among recovered artifacts, the female warriors' weapons generated particular interest. Previous archaeological records confirm Tagar women occasionally received weapon burials, yet those mostly consisted only of arrowheads representing hunting skill or long-range self-defense. Finally, we investigate more than 1,500-year-old death masks from a previously unknown burial ritual. Across our exploration, we have reviewed many strange funeral customs. Some societies filled tombs with gold treasures. Others added weapons, chariots, or whole horse herds for the deceased's afterlife. But imagine burials that did not preserve full intact bodies. What if only partial bone fragments remained, placed inside fabric or leather human-shaped figures while plaster death masks recreated each person's facial features? It sounds like ancient legend, yet archaeologists documented exactly this practice within Kemerovo Oblast in southern Siberia. Excavations at the Shestikovo III burial complex uncovered one of Siberia's most singular funeral rites from history. This burial site dates back over 1,500 years, belonging to the Tashtek people inhabiting wide areas of Siberia, roughly from the 2nd century BC up to the 6th century AD. Excavation lead Dr. Pavel German from Kemerovo's Institute of Human Ecology explains the underground burial chamber spanned approximately 430 square feet. Teams worked across 2 full field seasons uncovering its internal structure. Beneath centuries of accumulated soil, experts estimate roughly 30 individuals were interred within that single underground room. When remains emerged from Earth, everything differed from standard cemetery findings. Archaeologists usually anticipate reasonably complete skeletons. Not here. Most bodies had undergone cremation. Only larger bone fragments survived burning. The Tashtek did not simply deposit these charred bone pieces directly into graves. Instead, they constructed human form figures from leather and cloth, carefully inserting surviving bone fragments inside each effigy. Over every figure's head, they fitted custom-molded plaster masks, recreating the dead individual's facial appearance. Effectively, they recreated each person one last time for their eternal resting spot. One hypothesis suggests preserving recognizable faces allowed spirits to identify their own bodies traveling toward the afterworld. No surviving written records clarify the true meaning behind this remarkable custom, so interpretations stay speculative. Dig teams recovered around 30 plaster masks, many shattered into countless small shards after more than a millennium underground. Local soil conditions with consistent moisture and extensive plant root growth accelerated deterioration, unlike dry, sandy locations that better preserve such artifacts. Even so, specialists hope to reconstruct large portions of these masks to reconstruct physical appearances of Siberian inhabitants from 1,500 years ago. Successful restoration would create irreplaceable windows onto how these ancient people looked. The chamber contained far more than masks alone. Archaeologists found ceramic containers, bronze buckles, horse gear, and everyday practical objects. Other Tashtik sites also yield miniature sword, arrow, and quiver models. Those artifacts show Tashtik spiritual beliefs shared themes seen across numerous old cultures. The deceased entering another realm required familiar personal belongings. Within this burial complex, researchers noted one stark distinction. Children younger than 5 received no plaster masks. They also escaped cremation practiced upon adults. Young juvenile remains lay near chamber outer walls, separated from the effigy figures housing adult bone fragments. This demonstrates clear, differentiated funeral treatment between adults and small children, though reasoning behind that separation stays unresolved. One theory proposes very young children were not counted as full community members. Another idea suggests Tashtik belief held child spirits naturally returned back to nature without needing elaborate, adult-focused funeral rituals. Both ideas remain unproven conjecture. The burial chamber construction itself is fascinating. Workers first dug a large subterranean pit, then built surrounding stone walls. The upper portion was covered by heavy wooden beams and sealed using stacked tree trunks. Interments did not all happen on a single day. Over more than 1 year, whenever community members passed away, new cloth and leather effigies with plaster faces were placed inside the underground room. Slowly, the space filled with these quiet, masked figures resting side by side. Witnessing the chamber in its original intact condition must have been an extraordinary sight. 30 pale plaster faces sitting silently in darkness, preserving memories of an entire vanished community. Each mask is more than archaeological artifact. They represent rare portraits, allowing later generations to visualize real human beings who once inhabited Siberia more than 1,000 years ago. Our journey through Siberian archaeological finds has carried us from the 7,700-year-old grave holding what may be humanity's oldest known tragic twin birth, onward to Tagar tombs packed with warrior weapons and the Tashtik people's haunting plaster death masks preserved beneath frozen ground. Every discovery represents one missing fragment of a massive historical puzzle. Some mysteries have yielded answers thanks to modern science, yet many questions today can only be addressed through theories and educated guesswork. Which of these incredible archaeological finds impressed you most? Share your thoughts down in the comments section. Remember to subscribe and turn on notification alerts so you never miss our upcoming history exploration episodes. Thank you for joining this adventure, and we will return in our next video bringing even more captivating ancient mysteries.